It's Monday, January 26th. This is Here First from Iowa Public Radio. I'm Megan McKinney. Hundreds gathered in downtown Iowa City yesterday to mourn the death of Alex Preddy, a Minnesota resident who was killed by federal immigration enforcement officials on Saturday. IPR's James Kelly reports.
Disgust, terror, anger, those are just some of the reactions people say they had after seeing videos of federal agents swarming VA hospital nurse Alex Preddy and shooting him several times in Minneapolis. It's just weeks after another federal officer shot and killed Minnesota resident Renee Good. Jamie Panduro-Oriana says she has been alarmed by how the White House and certain news outlets have framed the shooting based on the video evidence.
It's just inhumane. It's not even a political issue. It's a human rights issue. And I think just anybody that can think logically can see that what's going on is so disgusting right now that it feels wrong not to speak up, not to say something, not to be out here fighting.
Many people said they had relatives or other ties to the Twin Cities. I'm James Kelly, IPR News.
Iowa Congressman Zach Nunn says he's asked ICE supervisors for a briefing on the rules of engagement for federal agents. Nunn, a Republican from Ankeny, says loss of life in America is always a tragedy, and leaders, law enforcement, and local communities are reeling. Nunn says all have an obligation to de-escalate as investigations proceed. Two Democrats competing for a chance to challenge Nunn's re-election in the 3rd District say what's happening in Minnesota is not making the country safer. Sarah Trone-Garriott says there needs to be an independent investigation, and Jennifer Converse says it's time for Congress to demand accountability. President Donald Trump will be speaking in a Des Moines suburb tomorrow. The Iowa Republican Party says Trump will be speaking in Clive tomorrow afternoon. Trump's chief of staff has indicated the speech will be focused on the economy and will kick off weekly events to bolster Republican efforts to retain majority control of Congress in the 2026 general election. The venue for Trump's appearance was the site of the Iowa Republican Party's 2024 state convention and is owned by David Barker, an Iowa City real estate developer who is a former economist for the Federal Reserve who moved back to Iowa in 1994. Barker is now serving in the Trump administration as the U.S. Department of Education's Assistant Secretary for Post-Secondary Education. President Trump gave a speech in Iowa last July to kick off America 250 at the Iowa State Fairgrounds. The University of Iowa is launching an initiative to improve cancer screening rates. It's funded by Eli Lilly and is being rolled out at Greenwood Pharmacy in Waterloo. The pharmacy will screen 500 patients for lung cancer over the next 2 years and then train more pharmacies to offer the screening, particularly in rural areas. Rob Nichols is the director of clinical operations at Greenwood Pharmacy. He says part of making lung cancer screenings more accessible is meeting people where they are.
Lung cancer remains one of the deadliest cancers. Not because it's untreatable, but because it's often detected too late. In Iowa, only about 20% of eligible Iowans currently receive annual lung cancer screening. That's an access problem.
The initiative wants to increase annual lung cancer screening rates by 50%. The American Lung Association says lung cancer has one of the lowest 5-year survival rates at just over 28% for 2024. It's Here First from IPR. I'm Megan McKinney. In just a moment, Legislative Monday. Last week, state lawmakers considered bills on property tax relief, eminent domain, higher education, and other issues. The latest from the Iowa Capitol. Stay with us. Welcome back to Here First from IPR. I'm Megan McKinney. It's Legislative Monday. We are entering the 3rd week of the legislative session. Lawmakers have already proposed bills on property taxes, higher education, and eminent domain. IPR's Katerina Sostarek joins us. Good morning, Katerina. Good to have you back.
Good morning, Megan.
Let's start with property taxes. The governor and House and Senate Republicans now have all their proposals. How do the three compare?
Governor Kim Reynolds' bill and the bill from House Republicans have a key point in common. They would both prevent city and county revenue from growing more than 2% each year, with some exceptions. And they say that's important for keeping property taxes from increasing too quickly. Senate Republicans also proposed limiting local government revenue growth, but they would tie the limits to inflation to give cities and counties more flexibility to deal with changing economic conditions and rising costs. The governor and Senate Republicans are both proposing special tax breaks for seniors, but they approach that in different ways. And House Republicans are calling for a tax exemption that applies to all residential property owners. There's a lot more than that in these bills, but overall, the House bill is the shortest and simplest, and the Senate bill would make major changes to the property tax system.
When could we start seeing debate or changes to these bills?
It's not really clear right now. House Speaker Pat Grassley says he wants to start having conversations with the other GOP leaders to try to find an agreement on property taxes. But at the same time, the House and Senate could start holding subcommittee hearings on their own bills. Usually major tax bills get figured out at the very end of the legislative session. It's possible that could be different this year with bills getting released so early in the session.
House Democrats have proposed a water quality bill. What's their approach to the issue?
They're proposing more funding and new tax credits for farmers who adopt practices that improve water quality. So they would build on Iowa's current voluntary approach to improving water quality, which is creating incentives and providing assistance to farmers, rather than requiring farmers to use certain water quality strategies. House Democrats say while there's more that could be done, this is a first step that they believe can bring everyone to the table, including Republicans and farmers, to try to take some additional steps to improve Iowa's water quality. Republican leaders have not sounded interested in working on water quality this session, but this type of approach would be much more likely to get some GOP support than if Democrats had proposed new regulations.
Eminent domain would be banned for carbon capture pipelines under a bill that's now in the Senate. Is this different than what was vetoed by the governor last year?
Yes, this bill that passed the House is different. It bans eminent domain for carbon pipelines. Last year's bill that Governor Reynolds vetoed had a lot of different provisions that would have affected other types of infrastructure projects. So when Reynolds vetoed it, she said it was too broad and would even block pipelines that don't use eminent domain. But this eminent domain ban for carbon pipelines is still expected to face a very tough path in the Senate if they even consider it at all, because the Senate Majority Leader has a completely different bill that seeks to avoid the use of eminent domain rather than restricting or banning it.
Moving on, House Republicans have already advanced a bunch of bills that would make changes to higher education. What are some of those bills people should know about?
One bill would let community colleges offer some bachelor's degrees. Supporters say there are parts of the state where people who are already working or have families just don't have access to a bachelor's degree program nearby, and having community colleges offer them for high-need jobs like nursing could really help. Private colleges say some of them would close if this becomes law because they believe they'd lose students to the community colleges. Republican lawmakers are also looking into performance-based funding for Iowa's 3 public universities and into keeping the names of finalists for university president positions secret, among lots of other higher ed bills.
What's on your radar this week?
This is looking like it'll be a week with a lot of subcommittee hearings. That's the first hearing a bill gets where the public can share their thoughts. Outside of the legislature, President Trump is scheduled to give a speech in Iowa tomorrow, and IPR plans to be there. There's also a Republican primary debate tomorrow night featuring most of the GOP candidates for Iowa governor.
Sounds like you'll have a busy week. Thank you, Katerina, for being here this morning.
Thanks, Megan.
And thank you for taking the time to sit with today's events and be informed with Here First from IPR. I'm Megan McKinney. Have a great day.